Well, I know it's taken a while to get this up here because it's been out for a month, but I had to watch the series and I was doing other things, and I watched this at a very slow pace. And I'm going to get into that, in this review, of course. Now, let's talk about the history of this show first. Gotta have an introduction, folks. Arrested Development, a show that ran for 3 seasons and was just abruptly canceled, as it says in the intro to season 4. Now, this show was just phenomenal. The jokes were so clever. It was a different type of comedy that not everybody got. It was, considered smart comedy. That's not to say that it didn't go for, like, goofy jokes at times that were, like, low-brow, but for the most part, it was highbrow. It was the thinking man's comedy. It was just very well done. They used references and just things that were never done or have never been done since. And, and there's been some really successful shows since, Arrested Development's been off the air. I'm thinking of The Big Bang Theory, where characters are coming to their own and everything. And we keep that in mind. There's been other shows after Arrested Development, but even shows like that, they don't ever really get into Arrested Development territory, because that was just a different kind of writing. Never saw television writing like that. Never seen it in the movie. Never seen it in television before. That's the thing. Everything is so samey now in television and in movies. It's really rare when you find something that doesn't rip something else off. And Arrested Development did not rip anything off at all. It was wholly original, and that is rare, to say the very least. This was undoubtedly the best sitcom since Seinfeld. I mean, Seinfeld, to me, it didn't beat Seinfeld. Some people will tell you that. A lot of people will tell you a lot of things, but I don't think that it did, because that is the epitome of comedy for me. The way that the actors in Seinfeld, Jason Alexander, Jerry Seinfeld, Michael Richards, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, just everybody in that fucking show, even the character actors that appeared in it, everybody was just on the mark in that show, and every episode pretty much was memorable. Now, Arrested Development, was every single episode memorable? Not all of them, but most of them were. They were very well written, episode to episode, and the continuity. See, that was the thing with Seinfeld. There wasn't always continuity between the episodes. Arrested Development had a story, and it had that driving force behind that story, and it was about a family, and how could they keep this family together while their father is in jail, and this family business is thrown into a whole tragedy. You got Jason Bateman, who's, Michael Bluth. It's the Bluth family, and they got to take over. He has to take over, and everybody's just spending the money of the company, even when they're not really making any money. And just the situations. It was situation comedy to the extreme here, and it was just all very unique, situations. Never seen like anything like this. Maybe once in a while, but for the most part, it was pretty damn unique. So it was it's a classic show. And seasons 1 through 3, it was a thing that, it was canceled because a lot of people didn't get it. Seinfeld is a little bit more digestible. This type of humor in Arrested Development, it went to places you wouldn't even think of. So it's kind of understandable why a show like this would be canceled. A lot of people complain, but, you have to remember, just because you like something, and I love this show, doesn't mean that other people are going to like it. People have a hard time digesting things. They're turned off very easily. Sometimes it's like one word or one thing about a particular show, and it just turns them off. Sometimes even a title can turn people off to something. So, Season 4. Let's get into it right now. Season 4, you know, all these petitions, people screaming on the internet, when is there going to be a reunion? Are they ever going to continue this show? What happens with Michael Bluth and his son George Michael when they pretty much escaped the family? The series pretty much, they ended season 3, even though that wasn't the way how they intended to end, because there was definitely going to be a season 4. But they ended season 3 a lot like season 1 started. And in some ways, when you look at season 3, it does almost seem like they were going to end it, because it seems like now they're going to go on some other type of adventure, business venture. It's going to be him and his son, and the Wacko family is being left behind, the moochers, the bums, basically, he's leaving them behind. And that would have been a good way to end the series. But okay, but season 4, they want to tie up loose ends, any questions you might have and all that, I guess, right? Wouldn't that be what season 4 is about? I mean, why bring back the show any other reason other than that? I mean, so this is going to undoubtedly be the definitive end to Arrested Development. And yeah, so we've got it. It's on Netflix. The Netflix has probably got a lot of extra subscribers now. I mean, that was obviously the ploy, to get extra subscribers by, coming up with a big thing like this, a classic show. They're releasing new episodes, not just new episodes like lost episodes or deleted scenes. It's a whole new season. 15 episodes. Never seen anything like that done before. They brought it back due to fan demand, a lot like they did with Jericho and all that. And I wasn't too crazy about Jericho, although that show could have stayed dead and buried. I wasn't too crazy about that, but it was pretty impressive that the fans' voice, carried enough weight that they would bring back a show for an extra season to tie up loose ends and all that. So, season 4 is here. And, that's great, right? It's gotta be. I mean, it's a great classic show. It's fucking horrible! Alright? There I said it. Everybody on the internet giving this positive reviews. Are you fucking serious? Come the fuck on! If you think that this season is good, you're fucking insane. Do you remember how good the first 3 seasons of this show was? It should have stayed dead and buried, because now they have buried it, and not in season 3. When I say it was dead and buried, I mean they they had a 21 gun salute and shit like that. It was honorable. It went out in style. Now it's going out in a flaming wreck like the fucking Hindenburg, for goodness fucking sakes. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. The people who worked on this show, what a bunch of fucking goofballs. I mean, for real. This is awful. I mean, it's not to say that this show's it is a complete bust. I'm not even going to sugarcoat this at all. It does have some funny moments. There is at times where it makes me laugh. I actually legitimately laughed at a lot of parts in this, and said some jokes were clever, but they were few and far between, folks. It's way better than How I Met Your Mother. That's for God fucking sure. But when it comes to stacking up to today's A-list comedies like Big Bang Theory, which is just a show where the actors have gone into it. And I mentioned it before. There has been things now that have kind of replaced Arrested Development. Now I don't have a problem with them bringing it back as long as it would have been good. But this is not good. This is bad. So they sort of, kinda pick up where they left off, but they go in a whole new direction. And the stories intertwine parts of these characters. And let me just explain how they decided to go about this. Every single episode of Arrested Development, the cast was together. you never really had an episode, maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 episodes, where, you know, George Sr., George Michael, and Michael Bluth, and Job and Tobias, they were all there because the whole thing was that Jason Bateman, Michael Bluth had to keep all these wackos together. I mean, everybody's fucking crazy, especially Job, a magician, a magician that wasn't even good, and you know he's spending money on just crazy things, and Tobias, who had a successful career as a psychologist, psychiatrist, and you know he just blew it away because you know he wanted to be an actor, and you know he just can't get it done. Now, the stories that they've assigned to each character are sort of fitting. To run down the list, some of them are just downright odd, like George Sr., who's, you know, still on the run. He's still sort of a criminal, but they don't really make that much a big deal out of it. Now they're more after Lucille, you know, the Bluth family mother, and she ends up in prison for some reason, and she has a couple of episodes dedicated to her. So yeah, each character gets at least one episode to them, all the major characters. So Job has an episode, George Michael has an episode, even Maybe has an episode. So, you know, I guess that was wise to do if they couldn't get all the actors together, because it's already been confirmed these actors are working on different projects. They're off doing different things. You know, people like Will Arnett are in various comedies, and they can't really start on, you know, doing shows and being there full time. So, you know, that's understandable, I guess. But the thing is, it shouldn't have been done because it's too different. I mean, it's all right, but it's too different. It's supposed to be about the family and the family interactions. That's where all the comedy came from. When one family member, like Job or Tobias, would do something odd or crazy, the family would react in a very funny way, and one member of the family's actions always affected everybody else, and things became very public. You know, for example, when Job blew up the boat, you know, they thought they fucking killed somebody, and it affected the whole family and the publicity. And then there was, you know, Job taking over the Bluth family housing, and it was just, it was crazy. It was a wild adventure. And now in season 4, what is really the main storyline here? Well, they all meet at the end. It all ends at Cinco de Cuatro. It's some, you know, celebration that right before Cinco de Mayo, and they're all meeting here, and you know, there's certain things going on now. They've got involved in politics to an extent. There's things about a wall. George Sr. has gotten involved in some weird political mishap. And, you know, Lucille is there, and it even affects people like Buster, who ends up sleeping with the politician's wife. And, you know, it just, there's things about here, like, you know, where there is some character growth. You see Buster, for example, just like a random example. Buster, who was always the man-child, he couldn't escape from his mother. You know, he loved his mom so much. He was so much of a mama's boy. It's weird. It's odd. One of the better episodes is where they show where he's so obsessed that he actually makes a life-size doll out of Lucille. And Lucille walks in on him when he's on top of this doll. See, there are some moments in this show, but then there's just Tobias, for me, David Cross. Holy shit. Was that man brilliant in his character? But now, he's downright fucking boring as shit. Now, in the Tobias character, they've brought him back. His hair's a little bit darker. He's obviously had to dye it, but that's okay. I understand that they have to do certain things, because these actors have obviously aged. But I don't blame any of these actors. They're all great. Because after what they did in the first 3 seasons, they don't really owe us much. They gave us a lifetime of great comedy. But the writing for this is just fucking horrendous. He gets involved with a junkie. Still talking about Tobias. He gets involved with a junkie. They end up making a Fantastic Four remake, which also bridges over to probably what is the main storyline of this, and that really revolves mostly around Michael and George Michael, father and son. And this is even a little bit odd. Michael ends up running into Ron Howard's daughter. He meets up with Ron Howard as well. He ends up dating Ron Howard's daughter. And weirdly enough, his son ends up dating her as well. And this is a slow build. They deviate from this at times because then each episode they jump to a new character. And by far, the person who has the most boring story in this is Lindsay. Not to say that she was the best character, but the girl had some attitude, and you know, another great actress. And her story is just odd. She goes to India. There's even a point where Tobias ends up in India. There's weird things with an ostrich. I'm like, it's weird. I don't like the way they went about this. It's just too odd. They did some weird, crazy things in this show. That in this season, I'm not going to say show. I don't want this to be a part of the season, the Arrested Development canon. I don't want it to be canon at all. I want it to be some weird experiment that went horribly wrong. It's pretty damn terrible. It's inconsistent, and the ending just is fucking just. It's a little, this show has always been about going, that extra mile to get those laughs, no matter how they have to get them. And, it's never cheap comedy, but it feels cheap at times. And the fact that, George Michael and Michael Bluth are dating the same girl, and they're banging her, and, they could have kept this less creepy, given some boundaries. Like, for example, like in Back to the Future, I know it's a movie, but remember there was a lot of concern with Robert Zemeckis, the director of that film, that when his mom is hitting on him in 1955, that, it could get a little creepy and it might creep out the audience to the point where they might dislike the film because it'll come off as incestual and just wrong. So, at the end of this series, he finds out that his dad has been banging the same girl that he has, and he punches his dad. And it ends like that, pretty much. And then, then they do the little epilogue part where Buster gets arrested for murdering Lucille too, and I don't know why, but this happens. And there's always been these wrongful arrest gags in the previous seasons, but that was different. It was funny when it was George Sr. and his brother Oscar, where they're identical twins, and they would always arrest Oscar. They did hark back. There's a lot of references to the old episodes from the previous 3 seasons. But they do it, and it really doesn't matter. And it's just weird. And wow, I really didn't like that fact that he finds out that his son is banging the same girl that he is. That just was, you don't go there. It's not good. And it's one thing if maybe they did it at some point in the show, but to end it that way, oh God. He punches his dad, and they've already been having problems, and that's about the only thing that you could really feel connected to in this, because that is probably the best written part of this show, and that's just um, Michael and George Michael and their relationship, how they're growing apart, they're lying to each other, they're avoiding one another. And that, that type of storyline is pretty good. It's relatable. It's kind of a rip-off. It's kind of, a little bit cheap. But, they were all about originality in the first 3 seasons. Now they're going back to this old, father and son are having problems, conflict. And that's just tired. Tired and true to a point, because it does somewhat work here. But, it's weird. And it just feels like they rushed it. His son is, working on this, he's working on an app for a phone for a woodblock, the musical instrument. And somehow this gets misconstrued by Maybe, and she thinks that he makes up a lie. I forget how they go about it exactly. But it's supposed to be identity protection software. And basically, this is how they kind of fit the story in there for George Michael, and it just feels weird and like bad writing. And why does it feel like bad writing? Because it is. It's just thrown together just to give the season some purpose. And Job, also something like very creepy. I mean, he is a creepy guy, so I guess it fits. But then he starts dating George Michael's ex, Anne, the girl that everybody made fun of and his own father didn't like, the Christian girl. He starts dating her, almost marries her, and then goes on, and then they start delving into who we were introduced to last season. There was Ben Stiller, and he plays Tony Wonder, which is, Job is not a very good magician, but however, Tony is. And they have a conflict, and then there's some weird thing where they think they're gay together, but it's only because they're friends and they've never witnessed friendship together. It's funny, but really it's the type of comedy that's just a little bit too uncomfortable and too weird. Like I said, boundaries. When you've come up with just a weird, funny storyline that's going to work, and then there's storylines that are just so weird that they look like they were thought up when you were smoking fucking crack or high on shrooms. And this type of thing here, with this gay thing, that's the latter. That's the shrooms talking. It's not good. And it's weird. I mean, why is everybody dating George Michael's girlfriends? It's, I don't know. I feel sorry for him, but at the same time, I feel more creeped out. It feels pedophilic, and also Tobias. They bring his, his kind of like gayness that everybody thinks that he is to like a whole nother light. He ends up on To Catch a Predator, which is a little bit clever, but once again, I think that they just went too far with some of this shit. Way too far. And it doesn't even fit in. It just comes off as very random. Like, there's no reason why he needs to become a child predator. I mean, allegedly. I mean, I don't get that. And it just comes off odd. And there's just a lot of celebrities just thrown in for no reason. Like okay, so Michael Bluth, I didn't even mention this, is making a movie. Ron Howard offers him to make a movie about his life. And, it's because his father's been to prison. They've become a notorious family. He just has to get the rights to the film. He has to have every family member sign off. So, well, pretty much, long story short, he doesn't get them to sign it. The only one who does, in fact, sign it is Buster. And this just goes on and on. And then, when the characters finally do cross paths, then they replay what you just saw. I don't know how many fucking times they showed George Michael and his dad on the phone at that fucking party. How many goddamn times did they have to hark back to that? I mean, what? Why are they doing basically recaps? I mean, I've always hated this shit. They've always done this alternate perspective thing. They've done it in The Simpsons. They've done it in a lot of shows where they'll show you the perspectives and then they meet up all of a sudden, and and then their stories just all of a sudden come together. It's an idea. It's something that the Arrested Development show hasn't done. But the thing is, like, I can see they did one episode like that, one episode, but the whole fucking season. Can you say overboard? It is beyond overboard. The fucking creators just fucking jumped off the fucking ship. I mean, this thing is just, it's absurd that they went this route. I mean, it makes it so cliche that way and annoying. It's tedious that they keep going back just as an excuse to get certain members of the family interacting, and they've already interacted and they still show it anyway. It's just a waste. And I cannot end this review without mentioning this. When they're doing the flashbacks, you see on the screen trial version of a certain company's software. Are you fucking serious? Really? You don't even see people on YouTube who are using archive footage, using trial versions. What the fuck is that? If this show, this season, couldn't feel any more cheap, this is the nail in the fucking coffin. To have trial version written across your screen. It's faint, but you sure as hell can fucking see it. Right there, it just makes this shit feel so fucking cheap. So goddamn fucking cheap. I can't even stand it. It like annoyed me to see that. Like, that's just pure laziness. Much like the whole fucking script for every single episode of this. It's just, oh man, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. This is just so bizarre, this whole fucking season. And what's annoying is it didn't need to exist. And this just proves, from this point on, reunion shows, and especially seasons, do not work. Ever. And it proves it. Because here, this is a different story. You've had all the characters come back, and they still couldn't get it done. Now, granted, I think that it could have been a lot better if it was like the old seasons, and that everybody was together in the same room most of the time, sharing their experiences, having their problems affect one another, and sort of it does here, but in a really weird and indirect way. And that's not to say that a lot of their actions were indirectly affecting people in the first 3 seasons, but it's not the same way. It's either coincidence or just something that doesn't make sense. And there's a lot that just doesn't make sense. And they try so hard to show, like, hey, look, we've got continuity. And it just gets to a point where I'm like, I don't give a shit about continuity. I'd rather it just all be fucking random if it's just going to be done like this. It's just a sloppy project. It was really, seriously, completely thrown together. And that's, when you think of this season 4, if you think about it honestly, and you really are a true fan, and you could definitely see that. I mean, I know, it's people's opinion, right, that they like. No, because really, there's no way. If you saw all the episodes, or most of them, or even half, a quarter of the old shows, you will know that this one is nothing like it. There's small traces of Arrested Development, but this is not Arrested Development. This is like a mockery, a parody. It's like almost like you feel like they're gonna come out and say, like, April Fools, this wasn't the real season. Here's the real season. But no, it's not a joke. It's not April Fools. April Fools passed a long time ago. It's, no, this is the final finished product. Now, I know it doesn't look finished because it still says trial version when they do flashbacks, but lo and behold, this is season 4. And it is fucking disappointing. Very disappointing. And it is horrible. It's probably one of the biggest disappointments I've had in my whole fucking life when it comes to television and movies. This was just a complete bust. I really think that they should strictly consider just destroying this fucking evidence of there ever being a season 4. It's that bad. They should try to, like, hide this one. You know, like, when things fail, like, they usually try to hide it, kind of like, you know, like Staying Alive being the successor to Saturday Night Fever or Grease 2. You know, they try to hide these things. Like, they're shown on TV from time to time, but they're not really talked about. Nobody wants to talk about them. And that's how it should be for season 4. Just, you know, it should be like Fight Club. First rule of season 4, no one talks about season 4 because it was a complete and utter fail. That's all I've got to say about this. If you want to say that this is good, that's your stance. That's a weird stance. I live on planet Earth where things are allowed to be judged no matter how good the past episodes were. These 15 episodes, all of them, they suck. All of them suck. Some of the jokes are okay. As I said, if I have to say one good thing about it, it's that there is some good acting in this. But, and there are some small moments that I will remember for about a week. But overall, you know, I have to compare this to the old shows because it's canon. It's part of the same thing. And it just doesn't get the job done. There you have it. Season 4 sucks.